how many of you have noticed, at least during the course of your lifetime, a shift in fast food? Anybody? Even claps, okay. I was one of those weird kids that was basically born a vegetarian. I had never tasted soda. I still have never tasted it. So fast food was never really a thing for me growing up. And I have to say, from my vantage point, I look at all of the options that are available now. I think about the salads at McDonald's. I think about the Impossible Burger, and I see, at least optically to me, what looks like a vast improvement, right? I'm definitely one of those people that if you had asked me over the course of your lifetime, has the quality of fast food improved? I would have said yes, 100%, at least, again, from my personal experience of it. And it's not just the fact that when I was a kid I couldn't eat fast food at all, but it's the fact that I actually know that there are human beings who are attached to the change. Like, I know founders who have started companies that are solving this problem, right? And I actually know individuals who are working inside of the huge food conglomerates, working from the inside to see change happen, right? So some of those people are executives in companies, some of them are famous chefs. They have names, they have families. I know who they are. So it's not just this big amorphous thing. To me, it feels really personal. Like, I personally have an experience of an improvement. But you know where I'm going with this, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm an engineer, so I'm going to hit you with the data. Fast food, I'm sorry to say, is not actually better. Apparently, nearly every study on the subject says that despite the vast number of choices that are offered at fast food restaurants, some of which, yes, are healthier than others, the truth is the sizes, the calorie counts, and especially the sodium content of food overall has worsened over the course of our lifetimes. Measurably, significantly worse. So you would think at least, well, now there's a variety of options. I can get a salad at McDonald's. And that's at least a little bit of silver lining. It turns out that's not even true either. It turns out that studies show that the majority of the new items added to menus have tended to be even less healthy than the regular items. Objectively, that's what the data says. So, I know some of you who weren't clapping, smarty pants in the room, already knew this about fast food, but if you were like me in thinking that things were rosier than they actually are, let me tell you, you are not alone. Despite the fact that I think that we all agree on this idea that we all need to eat more healthy, there's this sort of national consensus that this is something that has to happen. Americans don't agree on anything, but we agree on that. Those veggie burgers and those kale smoothies ultimately serve to do two really important things, and they worry me a lot. One of them is that they lulled us into complacency, right? Most of us at the beginning of my talk were saying it's improved. So they lulled us into believing that somebody else was working on that problem, and that these secondary and tertiary outcomes, these nice-looking menu items that some of us have grown to love, that they were signals. More importantly, that they were meaningful signals of progress. And the second, and I would say the most important thing that they did to us, is they distracted us from the true north. Those veggie burgers and those delicious goddamn kale smoothies, they distracted us from not just not paying attention to the harm that was already being done, but they kept us from noticing that the harm was actually increasing. I promise you, I'm not here to talk to you about veggie burgers and smoothies, but I will say this, because as a Latina who started our first tech company in the 90s, and now, like a true masochist, I'm in finance, I know a little bit about where power lives and where power doesn't live. And I'm worried. I'm genuinely worried that we've lost our way. I'm worried that just like our well-intentioned friends in the food industry, we've lost sight of our true north. We've been distracted by basically our versions of the kale smoothies and the veggie burgers to the point where we have forgotten that the point of the work that we're doing is to shift power. Obviously, Tish James has not forgotten, but overall, power has not shifted. In fact, this is a stat that keeps me up at night. In 2022, today, despite the fact that people of color represent 70% of the world's population and the new majority in the United States, and despite the fact that last time I checked, women continue to be half of the world, white women and people of color combined control less than 2% of the world's money. Less than 2% of the world's capital. That means that we have a say on how less than 2% of the world's capital is spent, invested, loaned, used to feed, to educate, and to house humanity. And if you really cannot think of anything better to do with your money, to buy Twitter. Which is why ownership is what matters. Ownership. From the house that you live in, to the businesses that you run, to ownership of the land that was stolen. Ownership is where power is centered. You can be removed from a board position. As the CEO of a company, you can be fired. As the president of a country, you can be impeached. You know who can't be fired? An owner. When the founder of Uber finally started facing the consequences for his misdeeds, he was removed from the company that he started. He was removed from the board and from the C-suite. But to the chagrin of a lot of us, he was still very influential in the management of that company. Why? Because you can't fire an owner. His stake was worth billions. Elon Musk, whew, just take a breather there. Elon Musk was offered a board seat at Twitter, and he said no. Why? Because when you want power, you don't go where power lives temporarily. You go where they can't fire you. You go where the power is, and that is as an owner. So you want to know what I think about the efforts to get women on the boards of companies? Veggie burger. What about closing the gender wage gap, or getting more women, specifically in the C-suite of Fortune 500 companies? Kale smoothies. But wait, I'm an investor, right? So what about getting more women into venture capital, or getting more venture capital into the hands of women? Impossible burger. Venture capital funds are not real companies. You can't sell them. You can't take them public. They expire after a few years, and everybody can either run off with the money, although most venture capital firms do not make money, or you can rinse and repeat and do it all over again. And in case you haven't noticed, venture money dilutes ownership. The whole point of venture capital is to take ownership away from the founder, and as we know, because we've all seen this movie before, that also involves taking control. You take ownership and you take control away, you take power. Now, don't get me wrong, I eat kale and I love smoothies. I'm not saying that we're wrong for fighting these fights. They matter. They all matter. And I know that if you're anything like me, I don't like using war metaphors, but this one feels appropriate at this moment. The old metaphor of in a battle you have to attack from all sides applies here. We have to attack the problem from all sides, but in that battle, you cannot forget why we're fighting. We cannot get so distracted by the secondary and tertiary outcomes, the shiny objects that look like progress, and forget about our true north. And let me be really, really clear. Representation is not it. A seat at the table, a position on a board, a C-suite title, it's not it. If the progress we are fighting for puts us only into positions where we can be fired, we can be dismissed, we can be disqualified or impeached, we are lost. Ownership is the true north. I don't want to sit on that hospital board. I want to own it. Right? I don't want to be in the C-suite of the company. I want to own the company. I don't want to be on the housing commission telling people what to do with their real estate. I want to own the land. I want to own the building. Or better yet, why not both? If you take anything away from today, other than the hanky-pankies, I want it to be this. None of the battles we are fighting matter as long as we don't own and control the machinery of the economy. We cannot afford to be distracted by the trappings of power. We can't afford to be lulled into complacency by titles and positions that anybody can take at any moment. The next time somebody sells you progress for women, or please, for you specifically, I want you to ask one thing. How much ownership does that come with? That's a nice salary. How much equity does that come with? Oh, you want my business? You have a woman at the helm of that company? How much ownership does she have? How much does she own? Ownership is power. And by all means, we should enjoy all the kale smoothies and all the veggie burgers we want, but don't let it distract us from the fact that until we get busy shifting ownership, we are leaving our daughters with a world where they have no control over 98% of the machine that runs everything. And our daughters deserve way better than 2%. Thank you.